Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Today we're going to have a little perspective. We certainly have a nice personality.
Yes.
Mrs. Busby, with your leave, I'd like to defer my kudos until next week. I'll come up with something. What I would like to take the kudo time is to acknowledge the death of a dear friend, Mary Helen McCarthy. Mary Helen had the temerity to die while we were in Arizona last week. Great lady. Had friends from all over heck and back. And she's going to be terribly missed. She had two children, Doug and Diane. And so their visitation is Saturday, November the 9th, over in Decatur at 10 o'clock in the morning. Service of 11 o'clock at St. Patrick's. Mary Helen was a neat lady, so I'd just like to acknowledge her passing.
Well, bless your heart. I'm sorry for you. You know, the only thing worse than losing a friend would be never to have had that friend.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point. You know, she's just smarter than a bear in the woods.
Yeah, well, no, that's been determined years ago.
Not so much. No, I think you made a very nice point there, Judith K. Very nicely. So I'll have to pass that on to her son Doug when I see him on Saturday. So this young lady has traveled a long way,
yes,
through highway and byway to get here over these roads today, although they weren't that terrible. Drive carefully out there, folks. Judith and I just had an idiot cross the bridge passing us at about 86.5 mile an hour.
Yeah.
Pure stupidity.
No lights on, by the way. No.
So anyway, be very careful out there. Judith K., let's get on to business now.
Okay.
We're not going to get paid if we don't move along.
Speaking of friends, this guest happens to be a friend.
Absolutely.
I go to the same church she does, and she's a very good member and very involved and active, and she makes me feel bad. Huh?
You mean she pays her dues?
She pays her dues, you bet. Y'all pays your dues. Now, Cathy Maciariello lives in Lincoln, but she is in charge here of the library, in the library museum complex, and she pulled off a real coup. I just am eager to hear how you ever got hooked up with the Smithsonian Institute and got them to come to Atlanta, Illinois. And tell us all about the whole thing from the start, if you would, Cathy, please.
Well, before we go too far, I have to give a shout out and compliments to my colleague Rachel Neisler,
yes,
who is the director of the museum. I'm the director of the library, and we work together on this project. But, you know, as the museum director, she has shouldered a major load in putting this project together. So I'm sorry she couldn't be here today because of the weather, because
right,
she deserves a great deal of the credit for making this happen. How we got into this project, we have a great relationship with Illinois Humanities, and Illinois Humanities runs the application process for this exhibit that the Smithsonian puts together every 2 years. They build an exhibit from scratch, and it's part of a program called Museums on Main Street. And I'm not sure how many years they've been doing this, but it's probably a decade or so that they've been doing this project. And the purpose of it is to provide access to museum activities and to sort of intellectual content in rural areas that don't always have access to a major museum in their community. So it's a really fantastic project the Smithsonian does, and it's such a good use of our federal money, because so often, you know, major projects are concentrated in highly populated urban areas, and so this is a real wonderful way to get out into the rural communities. What Museums on Main Street is about is celebrating Small Town America, Rural America. And they've done a number of different thematic exhibits over time. They've did one on waterways. I think they've done one on education. The theme for this year's exhibit is called Crossroads, Change in Rural America. So the exhibit examines all of the kinds of changes that have operated in the rural environment, everything from culture and community and economics and all of that. And they have put together this really incredible exhibit, which has been awarded to 6 communities in Illinois. It's a brand new exhibit. Illinois is the first state to get it. It'll subsequently tour other states.
Really?
But we are one of 6 organizations that won the competitive process to bring this exhibit to Atlanta. I think there were 19 or 18 applicants for it, and they awarded 6 communities this exhibit. And so it will be coming to Atlanta February 2nd through March 16th.
Right soon here.
Soon, yeah.
Personal note, I was just really rather amazed when I first saw your very neat little museum exhibit up there in the old Masonic Temple building, I think it is. Mm-hmm. You folks who have put that together have done a remarkable job. Not because it's a small community pulling together as they do up here, but there are a number of artifacts down there which are quite interesting. Mm-hmm. So kudos to that. Maybe that should have been our morning kudo to you folks who started that neat little exhibit up there. But it's very nice.
Rachel's a great curator, and we have a lot of material in the museum, which, one of the exciting things about this project is that we're going to be able to display some of our artifacts in new ways. We have limited space in the museum, so it's difficult to change exhibits all the time, and one of the requirements of participating in the Museums on Main Street program is that each community has to develop a companion exhibit that it kind of illuminates one of the focuses of the Smithsonian exhibit. So our companion exhibit, which has been in development now for probably a year, it's on schools. It's called Classrooms and Community, How Schools Shape Community Perception of Itself. And we'll be looking at, and it's really exciting because we're just now installing it, so we're seeing all of the fruits of the preparation right now. But we'll be looking at the network of one-room schoolhouses in all the townships around Atlanta, and then we'll look at the years where the school system was located in Atlanta itself, and the high school was in Atlanta, and all the rural folks came into Atlanta, and then from there, Olympia High School, and how that transition has happened and what impact that has on the changing kind of perception of community among the people who live in a particular region. So it's looking extraordinary at the moment, and we were able to do a series of about 20 oral interviews with people who went to the one-room schools, who went to Atlanta High School, and who went to Olympia, and we've used that material as kind of the backdrop and the content for the visual exhibit that we've put together. So we're excited to unveil that. And then there are also a lot of programs that we've put together that go along with the exhibit as well. So it's been a really comprehensive effort, tons of hours of work, but really inspiring and creative to be involved in.
In today's times, Cathy, and I think I'm probably correct about this. We probably don't think much about these little one-room school houses all over the countryside. We've advanced now. Time as the calendar pages have flown by, and we don't stop to think how important those little one-room schools were to a small community. That was the community center, so to speak. And that's where that was the social fabric of the community. People got together at these little one-room schoolhouses on a regular basis, and so as time and a half went by, they consolidated into the West Lincoln Broadwells and the Chester East Lincolns and the Atlanta's Hiddle Township gave up their school and it became a part of Atlanta, I guess. Those things were very, very important to the community. So we need to remember how important those schools were, not just from an education standpoint, and that was extremely, extremely important, of course. And you stop to think of the teachers who taught 1 through 8th grade in these little cold buildings.
Well, you know, one of the things that I learned throughout this process, and this is why I wish Rachel was here because she knows these historical details better than I do. I'm kind of the program person. But I didn't realize how many one-room schools were in the townships around Atlanta. I mean, there were many, many of them. And we put together as part of the exhibit a video demonstration that is, it's really cool. I can't wait for people to see it. That actually shows all of the one-room schools and how they moved into Atlanta, and then how we moved out again. And it's kind of a kickoff to viewing the exhibit. So I learned a lot about the one-room school system that growing up in Atlanta and going to Atlanta grade school and Atlanta high school, I kind of never knew about that.
Well, education, comparing then to now, well, there is no comparison. The highest tech they had then was a pencil or chalk, and you couldn't have afforded to have today's technology in a one-room schoolhouse. It just wouldn't have worked.
Well, I don't want to give away too much about the exhibit till people come to see it, but one kind of fun thing in our companion exhibit is that we actually have old chalkboards from the schools.
Oh, boy.
And one of the interactive elements at the end of the exhibit is a chance for people to actually write their comments on the old chalkboard, and we have erasers and chalk, and it's really fun. And then we even have a small one for kids, because most kids who go to school now, they've never written on a chalkboard.
I have no idea what a chalkboard is.
Do they even put them in classrooms?
Oh, I don't know. They don't.
Whiteboards?
Well, I don't think they do. They're all whiteboards. And
Yes.
you remember how we used to have above our chalkboards in school all the letters of the alphabet?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you had to learn your cursive. Well, they don't teach cursive anymore. So that's
More is a
another
pity,
thing
too.
that's missing. So there's a lot of sort of retrospective, nostalgic stuff in the exhibit too, which I think people will find really fun. And we have a lot of programs that are happening alongside the exhibit as well, which we hope people will participate in.
Do you have an opening date here?
Yeah, the opening will be February 2nd. We have a sort of pre-opening for all the volunteers and the donors who help make this possible on February 1st, and then we'll open to the public on February 2nd. And
how long will they be here?
We'll be open until March 16th, and I believe the hours are Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 3, and Sunday from 12 to 3, or by appointment. We've already had a lot of groups contact us saying, we'd
Sure.
like to bring a group to see it. Can we set up a time? And we have, we'll be doing some volunteer training next week, I believe, because we'll have volunteers on duty who can take people through the exhibit and explain some of the background of what's going on and steer people, through and help inform them about, what the exhibit is attempting to do and achieve.
Other than the items that pertain strictly to the Atlanta area, will this same exhibit be shown at, I believe you said there were 6 places in Illinois?
Yeah, let me try to remember where they are. We started out in Chester, at the Chester Public Library, and then it went to Winchester, and it's just ending up at Shelbyville. And we will go down to Shelbyville in a week or 10 days to pick up the exhibit from Shelbyville and bring
You
it.
have to truck it?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about this because it's actually pretty fun. We have to truck it,
Really?
yeah. And then after us, it goes to Marshall and DeKalb. And I'm gonna blank. I think that's it. Marshall and DeKalb.
I wonder who picked
Yeah,
out these
this
places.
is the most ingenious thing I have ever seen. It's an incredible engineering feat on the part of the Smithsonian. I mean, such respect for the people who work there. Probably aren't working there now, but but who generally who work there. We all went down to Chester when it arrived there so that we could all learn how to put this thing together.
Right.
And they have provided us with a schematic that actually goes on the floor. So you can take these big pieces of paper or whatever and lay them out in your space, because everybody's space is different. So we have to figure out how we're going to configure these different panel sections in our
The whole
space.
logistics would be a nightmare.
Yeah. And it arrives to you in 15 large containers on wheels, and every piece of this exhibit is labeled with the same label that's in the place where the piece goes in the box that it comes in. And so it's real, and then we get a large packet of, where all these pieces go. And the whole thing is snapped together and assembled virtually without any tools.
Woofta.
I've never seen, it's just incredible. And there's some technological pieces of it. Somebody asked me, I had a call from NPR a couple weeks ago, and they said, is the government shutdown going to affect your exhibit? And I said, no, I don't think so, because it's already made and it's already out, and we already know how to put it together. But if one of the technological pieces doesn't work, the contact, we're supposed to call it the Smithsonian, won't be there. So we're just hoping that when we get it and we put it together, that that those kind of interactive technology things work. But luckily Rachel's really good at technology, and so we should, we're hopeful that there won't be anything. Nobody else has had any problems. So
my dear old dad used to say, last week I couldn't spell engineer, and now I are one. I think that you're in that position.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that this just isn't, while it's located physically here in the Atlanta Museum, this isn't just an Atlanta piece of engineering or a museum that's peculiar unto Atlanta itself. This would be something that people as far away as Springfield and Bloomington would appreciate seeing and enjoying. Particularly older folk like myself who might remember some of those things.
Well, and I think that's why they're very good at choosing sites around the state in various geographical areas, so that it can draw people from the rural community around that particular site, so that that we go from the far south of the state to the far north of the state, and the exhibit really kind of blankets everything. And I think one of the things that's been really powerful about this is the degree to which it has galvanized community members to participate. And the exhibit that we have developed as our companion exhibit will now be a permanent exhibit at the museum. So, there's a real advantage to having participated in it. But, one of our local residents, Tom Parks, has built all of the cases for our exhibit as a donation. We paid for materials, but he donated all the labor to build these. And we have all the people who, participated in the oral interviews. We have all the docents. We also, as part of this project, are painting a large mural in the entrance to the building adjacent to the museum. And while that's been overseen by an artist, it's been painted almost exclusively by local residents who come and sign up to paint under her direction. And that will be unveiled in conjunction with the exhibit as well. So it's just been an incredible kind of gathering of people in the community in support of what Atlanta is all about, and that's been very rewarding.
It's kind of repetitive when you think about the one-room schoolhouse and what you're doing today, in that you have all these people involved in pretty heavy-duty work, and then they'll have the gift of being able to appreciate what they've put together. I don't suppose any of us, well, maybe Jim, he's old, as old as my children, went to a one-room schoolhouse, but you remember your grandparents and your great aunts and uncles talking about the one-room schoolhouse and what it meant to them, because they had to work so hard, man, woman, and child. And this was their time to get together, and this and church were about their social outlets.
You know, Judy, Cathy mentioned a very important word earlier in our discussion. She mentioned the word donor. And, you know, it occurred to me, in every community you're going to find some Tom Parks people. Tom being a good example of a guy who pitches in and helps in his community. Always has and will continue as long as he's able to, I'm certain. But these communities are made up of people like Tom, and that's why these communities can put these particular projects together.
Well, I'm thinking about what you said about the one-room schools, and we have this coming Friday night what I think is going to be a really fun program that goes along with this exhibit, and it's called Sports and Community. And it's how sports in the various paradigms that we're talking about actually bring people together. And we have Alice Turner's going to be one of our guests, and she went to a one-room school, and she's going to talk about that experience and the experience of the softball competitions among those one-room schools in the townships. And then she later was a cheerleader at Atlanta High School, and she has a granddaughter who played on the state championship Olympia softball team. So she kind of spans the whole the whole area, and so she'll be there. And then we have Dave Kindred is coming, and Laura Randolph Bowie is coming. And Dave was a player, and Laura was a cheerleader on the 1959 basketball team in Atlanta that beat Lincoln in the regional tournament. And we have some footage of that game that we'll be showing. And then we also have Fred Fincham and Alan Tolliver, who are coming from Olympia to talk about the girls' state championship, and we have footage of that game too. And you know, part of it is, you know, how are the communities different, you know, as you span all of those years, but also we'll be looking at the changes in girls sports. And we start with the boys in 1959, and we end up with the girls at Olympia winning the state, and that's a really exciting thing. So that's one of the programs. We have many others, but that's one that we'll be doing, and it's this Friday night. People can make a reservation by calling the library, or by calling the library.
I mentioned that very important word of donors. WLCN 96.3, we have important donors in a way. They're called sponsors, and they make these programs possible. So go right ahead, Mr. Ash. Right back live in the studios here, WLCN. Our guest this morning on Viewpoint is Cathy Maciariello. I hope I have that pretty close to being correct, Martha, as far as enunciation is concerned.
It isn't a Norwegian name, you know. Can you tell?
Somehow I associate that more with the Italianos.
Yes.
I don't know where that is in your background.
I've started using Hieronymus, which is the name that everybody remembers me by anyway.
Yes.
Spell it.
but it's too much work to officially change it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my, yes. Besides that, it's expensive. So,
imagine.
Cathy here to visit with us about a special project through our Smithsonian Institute, which is a magnificent place to be if you want to spend about 3 days there, because you sure can't do it in a day. But anyway, they have they're the father and the mother of a project wherein libraries and museums across the country they're making it possible for them to have special displays made. And they send the material and the whole 9 yards. They make it easy. You just have to have bodies to put it up. But it's a pretty exciting thing to have this here in this little community of Atlanta. Smithsonian did a good job of picking out various communities throughout the country. And we don't know whether those poor folks at Smithsonian are working today or not. We just recently had a trip to Surprise, Arizona, to surprise my brother on his 90th birthday. He was my mother's. I was my mother's favorite son until he came along, and he messed up that equation by coming along 5 years later. So anyway, we went through the TSA folks at the airports, and then I asked them, "Are you getting paid today? Are you on the clock?" "Not yet, sir, but thank you for asking." I just have to say a word with the TSA people that we encountered on this short journey. They were all very pleasant, very professional, and you would not know that there was a problem insofar as them and their wages were concerned. They were up there doing their job, hoping they were going to get paid. So doff my fedora to the TSA folks in Peoria and Mesa, Arizona. So the Smithsonian, those folks who come under the great guise of the government employees, they're still off the clock, so to speak. So you're still getting served by them. And have been served by them. So that's a wonderful thing. These exhibits that are going around the country, how many of them are there, Cathy? How many do you know that they have?
Oh, I knew you would ask me a detail like that I don't know
just
the answer to.
Just pretend I didn't ask the question. We'll move right on to the next subject.
Well, they do an exhibit every 2 years, and I think the program Museums on Main Street has been going for about a decade.
Really?
And in each year, an exhibit will tour to a state and about 6 sites in a state. So I mean, by now, hundreds of communities have been served by this program with one exhibit or another.
But importantly, these exhibits are reaching rural Americana.
Right.
Which is important.
Right.
Very much so.
Well, and I think it's also important. It's a wonderful partnership because the Smithsonian works primarily with arts and humanities councils in each of the states. So it's a great partnership between the state governments and the federal government to make the program happen. Illinois Humanities spearheads that work here in Illinois and the application process, and they have given us the training and they have brought us together to help learn how to put the exhibit together. They've just been remarkable in the support that they've given to the communities, and to a great extent it also improves and increases our own capacity to do things.
Yes.
Because it raises sort of the level of local involvement and expectation. So the quality of what happens will be long prevalent even after the Smithsonian exhibit is gone. The impact is very long lasting. And we also were able this year through Illinois Humanities to participate in the Illinois Bicentennial, which was sort of done alongside this exhibit, and we were one of 7 sites in Illinois chosen by Illinois Humanities to host a live podcast of issues related to the bicentennial, and we recorded our podcast, and I think the editing of that is about done, and the last I heard from Illinois Humanities, it'll be ready for broadcast on Illinois Public Radio soon. And so each one of those 7 podcasts deal with Illinois Bicentennial through a local lens. So we were really thrilled to be chosen to be part of that as well. And that was just one of the things we did alongside all the work we were doing for the Smithsonian. Yeah, in our spare time. But like I said, it raises our capacity, and the more we're asked to do, the more we learn we can do. And it's very fulfilling.
Well, I think it's just a miracle that you're able to do this. Atlanta isn't what you call a real business center in the known world, and here you are, blessed with the kind of people that dare. That's very brave. Really, it is. It's just like the people who used to say, we'll consolidate this little one-room school and that little one-room school, and everybody said, oh my gosh, the whole world's going to pot in a handbasket. Well, it didn't.
Right.
And now here you are doing these real innovative things in Atlanta for Atlanta, and the rest of us too, I think.
Well,
I think it's just marvelous.
Yeah, and I really want to compliment, our Board of Trustees, for the support that they give the staff and for their vision. It would be really easy to say, gosh, this is too hard for us, or maybe we shouldn't be this ambitious, or maybe this will cost too much. But because they look at these as opportunities to enliven the community, it just feeds on itself. And we've been able to raise, I don't know that we will cover all of the costs of the exhibit, but we will certainly cover most of the costs of the exhibit, and then of course we'll have an exhibit that we would have invested in anyway left behind. So they deserve a lot of credit for their vision on behalf of the library and museum, and as do our volunteers.
Yes.
To keep the downtown of Atlanta kind of vibrant. And Bill Thomas, for example, has done yeoman's work on helping us organize this exhibit and line up people to donate services and help with the writing. We had a number of people who worked with us, Tracy Bergen and Victoria Padilla, who worked with us to do the oral interviews, and then a whole list of 20 people who actually came and talked about their experiences in school. So it's just been remarkable, the amount of energy that's been poured into this project, and it's exciting.
Oh my gosh, yes, very. I bet your volunteers are so grateful that they signed up.
I hope so.
After the first 10 hours, maybe not. But again, typically in a small community, a few people, and I mean a few people, stepped up to the plate and picked up a large-sized bat and swing. And the result is that a lot of home runs in these small communities. I just was blown away by your little, I call it modest, and it is, museum up here in Atlanta. Wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't gone up to one of the Palms programs and then went upstairs to the hall afterwards for entertainment. Picker Danny Tackett being among them, and I call fiddler. Somebody put a lot of work and a lot of thought before they ever started physically putting it together. And it's nicely done up there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't. Is it all right for me to mention some of the people who have sponsored
as long as
this
we write it down so they
exhibit
send us a check.
Obviously, we have both intellectual and financial support from Illinois Humanities, which is wonderful. The Illinois Prairie Community Foundation made a major gift to the museum to support the exhibit. And we have the Atlanta Betterment Fund, the Atlanta National Bank, both our lead sponsors, and we have a number of individual donors as well who've contributed to making the project happen. So we couldn't have done it without them, and we just want to say thank you to them.
It's just really more than appropriate to make it known that these people stepped up. Jim smiled when he said Atlanta National Bank. If you hadn't mentioned that, why, we might have been shut off the air.
Well, I don't know. I used to work there when I was in high school. Jim might not know that.
Well, Jim was a lucky boy. He grew up in this great little community. Those people who grew up in the Mount Pulaski's and the Atlantas and the Mason cities and the smaller communities like that, they receive special values that you don't get in larger communities. And Judy and I, we kind of always try to blow on somebody's horn in these small communities because they sure they're deserving of it. And life in a small community is much more fun than in Mesa, Arizona's.
Well, yes, and it's invaluable as the years go by. My kids were pretty little when we came to Lincoln, and I thank my lucky stars that we ended up here, because it's good people, it's good influence, it's good memories. To be in an area that's called rural is a gift, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So.
Now, I mean, you've been in some really big places, Cathy. Like really out of town, like Italy.
Well, it's interesting, though, how you find community wherever you are. And I think we have spent a lot of time this year putting together all of our programs around that concept of community. even in New York City where I lived, there was a small community that was my apartment building, my neighborhood. No matter where you are, I think, community redefines itself, and that's part of what we wanted to accomplish with our companion exhibit, is to sort of examine the changing meaning of community through the changes in the school district. And do we have time for me to kind of give you the...
Go right ahead, dear.
Like I said, I don't want to give away too much, but I do want to mention the sort of thematic thrust of our companion exhibit, because it does so address that issue of community. And we have 4 sections of our exhibit, and they are: places in the heart, common places that define us; memories are made of this, common memories that shape us; the things we do, common ties that bind us; and finally, where everybody knows your name, common roles that connect us. So we have spent a lot of time thinking about those issues and talking to people about those issues and gathering content that will illuminate those issues in the context of our own local community. And so we hope that people will find that illuminating and provocative, and that they'll respond positively to it.
Is there of course, this is a no admission charge, but if somebody's disposed to really feel so good about this, they might want to leave $10 or maybe more. Is there a pot that they can leave some money in at the end of the... how could they do that?
They can contact
their
the library.
appreciation.
There will be a chance for people to make a donation if they like, as they come through the exhibit. And people can always contact the library, 217-648-2112, if they would like to find out ways that they can support these activities in the community.
Before the clock chases us out, would you repeat the dates and the times?
Yes.
Please.
This exhibit opens on February 2nd and runs through March 16th. We will be open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 3, Sunday from 12 to 3, and by appointment. And if people want to come through at a time that is different than that, they should call the library at 217-648-2112, and we will be happy to schedule a private tour for you.
What age would you suggest would be the earliest age that you should bring school children to, let's say a teacher would
To
like
the exhibit?
Yes. That'd be meaningful to them.
I would say probably 4th, 5th grade. We will have volunteers who will tailor the conversation to the age group that comes through. If I have any disappointment about the exhibit, it is that I wanted to put together a children's room that would be interactive to go along with the exhibit, and that was one of the things that we just ran out of time to do. So we are looking at the exhibit and ways that we can actually tailor it specifically to kids. And like I said, one of the places that we have is a little blackboard for kids that's at their eye level, and we'll take them through the exhibit and talk with them about their school experiences, and they'll have a chance to leave some of those experiences with us as well. So children are definitely welcome.
Speaking of blackboards, I remember we had a blackboard at my desk of sorts. You write on this tablet and you raise the sheet and everything disappeared.
Yeah.
Magically.
Oh, that's right.
So that's my memory of a quote blackboard. Cathy Maciariello, thank you very much for being with us this morning, talking about your Smithsonian-sponsored museum exhibit at Atlanta Museum, and that's the address of the town hall. It's on the main drag right across.
It's at 114 Arch Street.
114 Arch Street. That's right across from that big tall guy from Minnesota that's got that big statue out there. People stop and take their pictures and say, "Oh, who's that?" So I guess our closing comment would be kind of indicative of what Judy and I think about the small communities and how lucky we are to live in them. And it was simply the simple statement to be the reason somebody smiled today. Thank you, Cathy Maciariello.